Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, Kamala Harris, and Pete Buttigieg are distinguishing themselves as the top contenders in the Democratic Presidential Primaries, with figures like Beto O'Rourke and Cory Booker nipping at their heels. For most Americans, the other 17 candidates are likely to be left largely ignored. After all, who among us could say which of these candidates might actually be worth the second glance? Well, me. I'm going to try to do that. The mainstream media also seems to have their picks. I've noticed what I take to be disproportional coverage of characters like Klobuchar, Castro, and de Blasio. I myself have some alternative selections. In this video, I'm going to talk about 7 minor candidates who I consider to be potentially underrepresented in mainstream media coverage. I don't particularly support all of these candidates, but I do think they all have the potential to make a bit of an impact on the election going forward. In other words, this list represents an answer to this question: who's worth watching? The New York Times lists 23 Democrats running for president. Not included on their list is declared Democratic candidate Mike Gravelle, the former senator from Alaska who gained national attention for entering the Pentagon Papers into the public record in 1971 and forcefully leading unsuccessful attempts to end the Vietnam draft. Gravelle is yet to show up in the polls and is one of the very few primary candidates to be excluded by the DNC for the first round of Democratic debates. Gravelle is the oldest declared candidate and the only candidate to admit that his presidential run is not really aimed at getting him into the White House.
Yeah, I don't want to be president. Yeah. I'm too old.
Rather, he wants to draw attention to a number of issues of significance, first and foremost, a message of peace. But Gravelle is more than an anti-war candidate. Down the line, he proposes bold progressive measures focused in 4 key areas: a foreign policy of peace, attacking poverty and inequality, justice reform, and fundamental political reform. Among Gravelle's policy suggestions are a change to the U.S. Senate that would allocate voting power proportionally based on state population, self-determination for U.S. territories, abolishing capital punishment, prison reform, ending the war on drugs, a Green New Deal, internet access as a right, reparations, ending support for Saudi Arabia, banning foreign arms sales, and closing every military base in foreign lands. In a word, Gravelle's platform is among the boldest in the field. As he himself admits, he's not likely to actually become a serious contender for the party's nomination, and he has yet to transform the political dialogue. But on that latter front, Gravelle has an unusual tool at his disposal: the bright, tech-savvy teenagers who urged him to run in the first place. These teens are running Gravelle's social media outreach and have filled his Twitter page with sharp critiques of Donald Trump and corporatist Democrats. He may have failed to make the June debates, but should he gain the traction required to make the next round, Gravelle could be the Ron Paul of the 2020 Democratic primary.
The American people have been drugged into accepting the authority of the elites.
Miramar, Florida Mayor Wayne Messam largely remains a mystery among the Democratic candidates. In an Axios article called Wayne Messam, Everything You Need to Know About the 2020 Candidate, only 2 policy positions were outlined. He worked to make a local amphitheater gun-free, and he signed a letter criticizing President Trump for his withdrawal from the Paris Climate Accord. A CNN article covering Messam's exploratory committee announcement also noted that in 2017, he proposed requiring immigration officials to have a warrant to enter city-owned buildings. Coverage of Messam has generally been scant, but his signature issue is pretty clear.
Student loan debt.
Messam is proposing to wipe out more than $1.5 trillion in student debt. Messam is pulling at the very bottom of the Democratic field. He didn't make the first round of debates. His Twitter page currently has less than 8,000 followers. Still, as mayor of a city significantly larger than Mayor Pete's South Bend and located in a hotly contested battleground state, Mayor Messam may just be worthy of more serious consideration than he is currently receiving.
We are really looking at how we can improve the lives of America.
Marianne Williamson is currently polling at just 0.3%, but she is definitely one of the most unusual candidates. She does not seem to have any serious political experience, but is a veteran spiritual teacher who has published 13 books. Laugh all you like, some of her proposals may very well resonate. Her reparations platform, for example, is among the clearest and boldest in the race. Her plan involves giving somewhere between $200 and $500 billion over a 20-year period to an esteemed council of African American leaders who would then decide which educational and economic projects would receive the funding. When it comes to healthcare, she supports Medicare for all with some extra stipulations that you might expect from Marianne's healthcare plan, and no one else's. Finding drug-free ways of treating mental health issues, banning companies from marketing sugary foods to children, decriminalizing drugs, expanding the powers of the EPA and FDA, providing nutritionists and health coaches to all Americans, and developing a low-stress society.
There will be a commission of scientists talking about learning so that the American people see what's going on with these vaccines who are not paid by big pharma.
With no political experience and little traction in the polls, her chances of earning the Democratic nomination are astronomically low. Still, she may be able to make an impact by drawing a little extra attention to issues surrounding racial justice. Despite plenty of support online, Tulsi Gabbard has received little attention in the mainstream media and has generally been polling at 1% or lower. Her current RCP average is just 0.6%. Gabbard earned a passionate fan base among progressives for her 2016 support for Bernie Sanders and for her forceful anti-interventionist foreign policy positions, going so far as to declare that Assad is neither an enemy nor an adversary of the United States. Gabbard is known first and foremost for her opposition to regime change wars, and has been a vocal opponent of conflicts with Venezuela or Iran. The Iraq War veteran has a socially conservative past, having supported fiercely anti-gay groups allied with her father while she was in her teens and 20s. But since her service in Iraq, Gabbard has totally reversed course with a 100% pro-LGBTQ voting record, according to the Human Rights Campaign. Tulsi's website clearly lays out support for protecting the environment, investing in green energy and infrastructure, healthcare for all, protecting civil liberties and privacy, criminal justice reform, supporting small businesses, and breaking up the big banks. While Gabbard did not support AOC's Green New Deal resolution, she has sponsored and supported strong environmental legislation in the past. On healthcare, she supports prescription drug price negotiation and H.R. 676, a Medicare for all plan that many regard to be even stronger than the one proposed by Bernie Sanders in the Senate. On top of her bold progressive platform, I consider Tulsi Gabbard to be one of the most charismatic and poised candidates in the race. With more exposure in the mainstream media, I would expect her standing in the race to rise significantly. I would not be surprised to see a spike after her appearance in the coming Democratic debates.
We need to end these regime change wars, end this new Cold War and nuclear arms race we are in, and bring the trillions of dollars that we are spending and invest them in our people, in our communities, by doing things like providing health care for all.
Polling now at just 0.3% is Kirsten Gillibrand. Gillibrand does not quite have the progressive support enjoyed by more popular candidates like Elizabeth Warren or Bernie Sanders or even Tulsi Gabbard, but according to some, she should. While Gillibrand was once a conservative blue dog Democrat, her apparent progressive change came around the time when she joined the Senate in 2009. That was 3 years prior to Tulsi Gabbard's progressive shift. GovTrack's voting record meta-analysis ranks her as the most liberal senator in the country, even to the left of Bernie Sanders. This, of course, does not mean her proposals are as lefty as Bernie, of course they are not, but that her votes land on what is considered to be the left side of an issue more frequently. 538 also ranks Gillibrand as the most anti-Trump politician in all of Congress, noting that she voted with Trump's administration's stated policies just 11.7% of the time. She is a co-sponsor of Bernie's Medicare for All plan and the Green New Deal. She was a leader in the fight to curb sexual assault in the military, an issue she appears to be deeply committed to. Gillibrand enraged Democratic insiders when she became among the first to call for the resignation of Senator Al Franken during his Me Too scandal. She also earned the ire of the Clintons, who were previously close political allies, after criticizing Bill over the Monica Lewinsky scandal.
This conversation we are having today is really important, and that the kind of behavior that was tolerated a long time ago would never be tolerated today, and we can't allow it to be tolerated today.
But she was also embroiled in a Me Too type scandal of her own. A young female staffer resigned in protest in 2018 over how her office handled a harassment issue.
We interviewed all current employees that had relevant information. The sexual harassment claims did not rise to the level of sexual harassment.
Even after her apparent progressive shift, Gillibrand has remained thoroughly right-wing when it comes to Israel, aligning herself with AIPAC, supporting settlements and opposing Palestinian statehood. Despite rejecting PAC money, Gillibrand has also remained closely tied to Wall Street. In fact, she reportedly reached out to financial executives to gauge potential support for her presidential run, and her fundraising prowess has been praised in the past. Speaking from personal experience, Daily Beast editor-in-chief Tina Brown called her an amazing fundraiser, an unstoppable machine when she works the room. According to Open Secrets, from 2013 to 2018, she raised more than $20 million, almost 60% of which came from large individual contributions. Much of the money her campaign raised was left unspent, leaving her with about $10.5 million to use on her presidential run. Gillibrand's top donors have been lawyers, lobbyists, and members of financial, insurance, and real estate industries. Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan Chase, Deutsche Bank, and Citigroup all rank among her top donors. And while Gillibrand voted against bank bailouts 3 times, she also fought to protect derivatives trading. While it may be a little harsh to call Gillibrand a fake progressive, it's difficult to argue that the corporatist label no longer applies. Like Booker or Harris, Gillibrand has a mixed record, and financial ties that undermine any faith serious progressives might want to place in her. At the same time, Gillibrand has many of the positive qualities that have made Kamala Harris a top contender in the race. She's a strong public speaker, politically savvy, and telegenic. She may yet make a mark on the Democratic primary. Depending on how you look at it, Andrew Yang may not even be a minor candidate anymore. He's currently polling in 8th place in a field of over 20 contenders. Still, his support is at just 1.1% according to RCP, but you'd never know that considering the massive support he enjoys online. Yang's signature policy is what he calls the freedom dividend, his own version of a universal basic income plan. Basically, he wants to give all adult Americans $1,000 a month, and if you want more details, I did a whole video about his UBI plan, so check that out.
Do you see any downsides to universal basic income, though? I mean, there's always the fear that it'll disincentivize work.
It's actually pro-work. It will create 2 million jobs in the economy because people will have more money to spend.
But lest you think Yang is a one-trick pony, he actually has a massive number of policy positions spelled out on his website. He supports decreasing pretrial cash bail, lowering the voter age to 16, ranked choice voting, net neutrality, and Medicare for all. Some of his policy positions, like his foreign policy first principles or stance on southern border security, remain fairly vague. But more often than not, his platform reflects modern progressive solutions to serious problems facing the country. Take, for instance, his Democracy Dollars proposal. Yang also supports a constitutional amendment to overturn Citizens United, but given that that fight could take a significant amount of time to win, Yang's Democracy Dollars policy could be an effective interim step to limit the influence of big money in politics. With the goal of drowning out the power of elite donors, the plan is to provide every eligible American voter with a use-it-or-lose-it voucher of $100 to contribute to the campaign of their choosing each federal election cycle. According to Yang's campaign website, this amounts to $23 billion plus nationwide per election, allowing for more than 4 times the spending fueled by mega donor contributions and dark money. Yang's innovative platform and focus on a single, potentially popular policy could allow him to translate his online appeal to the mainstream. Polling at just 0.3% according to RCP, Jay Inslee is easily lost in the shuffle of relatively unknown candidates. But like Andrew Yang, Inslee has focused his campaign on a single issue, which could provide the opportunity to rise in the polls after a little more exposure. His issue is the environment, an issue that has seen renewed energy and debate since the introduction of AOC's Green New Deal resolution. But Inslee's environmentalism is not just a grab for attention. As far back as 2012, a press release from the League of Conservation Voters read, Jay Inslee laid out a future for Washington state that will build a clean energy economy in the state and make him the greenest governor in the country. After Donald Trump pulled out of the Paris Climate Agreement, Inslee co-founded a coalition of states to uphold the treaty's targets and principles called the U.S. Climate Alliance. Like the 2016 Green Party version of the Green New Deal, Inslee's environmental platform has 4 pillars. Transitioning to 100% clean energy, investing in jobs, infrastructure, and innovation, fighting for environmental justice, and ending fossil fuel subsidies. Focusing on one fairly significant issue paired with the fact that Inslee is a governor, good experience for a president, gives me the sense that he may be capable of breaking through the bottom of the pack and have an impact on the election. While it's difficult to predict the political potential of candidates polling around or below 1%, I believe each of these 7 has what it takes to have an increased impact on the Democratic primary. They have the potential to affect the policy conversation or to become a serious hurdle for the top contenders. At the end of the day, however, none are particularly likely to secure the Democratic nomination. I would expect a list of far more familiar faces to be a more plausible answer to that sense of the question, who's worth watching?
The American people have been drugged into accepting the authority of the elites.